In this great globalized world of ours, it is fun to find the few remaining things that keep countries different from one another. The obvious ones are things like flags, government, and candy, but I have always been personally fascinated by the different Santas of the world. Most Western and/or Christian countries have some sort of tradition where a magical guy comes and brings you presents on Christmas, but the specific nature of that guy varies a lot from country to country. In Scandinavian countries, for example, children are given gifts by Nisse. He is a traditional Scandinavian gnome who wears farmer clothes and a red hat. And unlike Santa, who only has a wife, Nisse has a wife and a bunch of kids. Around Christmas time, Scandinavian families like to decorate their homes with little dolls of him and his family, which can be as big as you want. There doesn't seem to be a canonically established correct number of Nisse children. The other big thing about Nisse is that he apparently really likes to eat porridge. You're supposed to leave a big bowl of it for him on Christmas Eve, just like cookies for Santa Claus. You're also supposed to put a big lump of butter in the porridge, because that is apparently how Nisse likes it, because he is apparently gross. The porridge thing, incidentally, seems to be a much bigger part of his character than cookies are for Santa. In basically all of the Scandinavian Christmas cards I looked at, he and the wife and kids are either eating it or cooking it. It just seems a lot less fun than cookies, though. In Italy, their Christmas presents come from La Befana, the lovable Christmas witch. She is apparently some old crone who gave advice to the three wise men way back when, and has been brimming with Christmas spirit ever since. She flies around on her broom giving presents to all the good children of Italy. And she's also apparently something of a booze hound, because you're supposed to leave her a glass of wine instead of cookies or porridge. This really seems like it is sending children some mixed messages about drinking and driving. In super Catholic Latino countries like Mexico and Spain, they have traditionally found the whole idea of Santa Claus to be a little bit blasphemous. So they are told that their presents either come from Jesus himself or possibly the three wise men, who I guess are still wandering around out there somewhere. If you ask me though, I think getting your presents from Jesus is actually the more blasphemous idea. I mean, it kind of cheapens the whole Jesus idea if one day he's the most powerful being in the universe and the next day he is the guy who comes to your house to bring you the new Assassin's Creed. Now here is the Russian Santa, whom they call Ded Moroz. Ded Moroz. Basically, the Russians just took Santa and tried to make him cooler. So whenever you read about him, the Russians always make a big deal about how he is taller than Santa and has a longer beard and nicer clothes and a better sleigh pulled by actual horses instead of crummy old reindeer. And just to really rub it in, he is also followed around everywhere by a sexy babe named Snegorachka, who is like some sort of enchanted snow maiden. You can imagine that the fan art people have had a lot of fun with her. In next door Finland, their traditional Christmas beast is a scarecrow goat man. Well, actually, it's a bit more complicated than that. See, originally the traditional Finnish Christmas monster was something called Joulupukki, which means Christmas goat, although he was really more of a thing made out of hay and farm equipment. So anyway, the Christmas goat would come to your house bringing presents for good children and beatings for the bad. And as thanks, you were supposed to give him scraps from the table, which he could stuff down his drooling mouth slit. But at some point, the Finns realized that Joulupukki was too weird and scary, so they retconned him into just being normal Santa. But here's the weird thing. They still call him Joulupukki, even though that literally means Christmas goat. Another weird thing is that the Finns believe that Santa/Christmas goat man lives in Finland. They even have this whole big Santa Claus themed tourist trap in northern Finland. This, however, contradicts what I was taught by the government of Canada, which is that Santa Claus lives in my country. The only interesting thing about Canadian Santa Claus is that the Canadian Post Office maintains this program where you can write letters to Santa at his Canadian address.
Write to Santa Claus, North Pole, HOH, OHO, Canada.
And he or one of his many unionized government employees will write you back at taxpayers' expense. And don't worry, if Santa Claus criticizes you in even the mildest way, for example, if you send Santa a 2-page letter of present demands and he responds by saying that you might be forgetting the true meaning of Christmas, you can always just get your mom to complain to the news until he writes you a nicer one.
But a young boy from New Brunswick who wrote one for himself and one for his younger sister got a not-so-nice response from the North Pole. You certainly have a long list. I think that you are forgetting about the true meaning of Christmas. It is not receiving gifts, but giving from your heart. The mother of the young boy told CTV News her son thought he had done something wrong. We asked Canada Post about the letter and were told a new one from Santa is on its way.
And lastly, we have Sinterklaas, the infamous Dutch Santa. Everyone loves Sinterklaas except for the Dutch, who are tired of having to explain his weirdness to ogling foreigners. So Sinterklaas is this sort of priest-like guy who lives in Spain, and once a year he comes over to Holland by boat, which is this big exciting thing for little Dutch children. He also has a horse. The infamous thing about Sinterklaas is that he is assisted in his Christmas duties by all of these blackface helper men called Zwarte Piet. Now, to most people, the Zwarte Piets are obviously supposed to be Sinterklaas's slaves, which makes the whole thing this big racist embarrassment. But the Dutch are very defensive about this, and they're like, no, they're just his helpers. They have a great relationship. And they're only played by white guys in blackface because tradition. In recent years, there's been a lot of efforts to tone down the controversy of the Zwarte Piets, such as by having white Zwarte Piets, or rainbow-colored ones, or retconning his story to say that he's not actually supposed to be black, he's just dirty from coming down the chimney. Yeah, that's it. So hopefully you had some fun learning about all these weird Santas of the world. Unfortunately, a lot of these characters are really only hanging by a thread these days. In a lot of European countries, the kids seem to prefer getting their presents from a jolly American-style Santa rather than a witch or a racist bishop, so you don't see them as much these days. Do you happen to know any weird Christmas monsters I forgot? Or even just the way that your Santa is different from the traditional American Santa? Let me know in the comments. Oh yes, and Merry Christmas, wherever you are.